Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lucy and in today's video I'm sharing the 7 lessons I've learned working in publishing in my 20s. So this video is one that I've thought about doing for a while, and honestly I didn't know if people would be that interested. Honestly, I don't really talk a lot about careers on my channel, but I do talk a lot about the publishing industry. So I wanted to share the learnings that I have gathered after working in publishing for 7 years. So I started working in publishing when I was 22 years old. I started working in the industry from 2014. So I've been there for a while. I've had like my fair share of like different experiences within the industry, and honestly I think this video will hopefully be helpful to people who want to get into the industry, but also if you are in your 20s and you have a career, you have a job, some of these lessons you also might relate to. So let's get started, shall we? Because I am just always fascinated, anything to do about working, anything to do about like the culture of working, and being a millennial who, you know, is working in a creative industry. I always love watching videos like this, so I just wanted to make my own. So lesson 1, my biggest lesson of over 7 years working in publishing whilst I've been in my 20s, is that your dream job is still just a job. So let me explain this a little bit more. So when I was a student at university, publishing was my pipe dream. It was the dream that I wanted to achieve, and I just set everything out to achieve that goal of getting a job in publishing. And honestly, when I got my first job in publishing, I was like, I've hit the jackpot. I can't believe this. Like, you know, I don't really care that it's quite a low salary. I don't really care that like I'm in a lot of debt right now because I've had to move to London and just cough up for a very expensive deposit. None of that stuff mattered because I was working in my dream industry. And don't get me wrong, even now, the fact that I get to do my dream job, like that one job that I've always wanted to do, is still a pinch me moment. But what I have learnt over the last few years, and as I am about to turn 30, coming out the other side of my 20s, I have learnt that your dream job is still just a job, you know? Like, you are going to have good days and bad days, even at your dream job, but a job is still a job. You can't glamorize your dream job, you know, because I think that makes you put up with things, and you might fall into the trap of convincing yourself you're happy in your dream job when in fact, you know, you're not being paid enough. Maybe you haven't got the promotion you wanted, you don't like the city you're living in, but you're in your dream job, so it's okay, it's all going to work out. I think it's important to not glamorize work, because work is just that, it is work. And I think with a dream job, you give more to that because you care so much. And this is one thing that I've really kind of learned over the years, is like, yes, publishing is my dream job, but it's not my life, you know? And kind of separating that has been so important for me, and realizing, you know what, like this still feels like work. I'm still getting really exhausted, I'm still getting burnt out at times from this dream job. But in my head, because I'm telling myself, you have to be grateful, it's your dream job, you know, that's not a healthy attitude to have, really. So I think always be aware of like, if you are in your dream industry, or you're kind of aspiring to get into your dream industry and you're thinking, oh, I'd love to do this, it would be my dream job, it would never feel like working, you know? Just be aware that a job will always still be a job. And I really do hate that saying where it's like, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Like, that is so untrue, and that's such a dangerous, unhealthy kind of attitude to have about your job, about work. So that is my first learning about working in the industry in my 20s, is that yes, working in publishing is amazing. Yes, I love my job, but it's still a job, you know? Okay, so number 2, my second learning has been every day will push you out of your comfort zone. I really do think that publishing has made me a braver person. It has made me a more confident person in some ways. but it has really pushed me out of my comfort zone in a lot of situations. I think it has really taught me that I can do anything when I put my mind to it, and sometimes just doing the thing, even if you don't know how to do the thing, is the way to go, because then you just grow in confidence. And sometimes the only way to learn something is just to fly on into it and just not listen to the doubts saying you can't do it. So I really do think publishing pushes me out of my comfort zone. There are new challenges every single day. Like, no day is really the same. And as someone who has suffered with social anxiety in the past, this was actually something that I kind of encountered in my mid-20s. You know, I'd worked in publishing for about 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden I kind of hit a wall where I just hated going to meet new people, and I really made myself anxious about that. And I kind of had to get my social anxiety addressed, you know? But the thing with publishing is, like, there will be so many opportunities, so many people to meet, that it's like, I've just found that it has pushed me into a place where I can be my better self. And it really does encourage me to just take a leap and just try to get out there. So that's definitely my second learning, working in publishing in my 20s. Number 3 kind of feeds into this a little bit, but my third learning is no one knows everything. And this is something that is just, I will always think will be the case. No matter whether you're working in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, probably, let's be real, we're all gonna retire super late because, you know, life expectancy and all that. That just went very dark. Anyway, I don't think you are ever done learning. And working in publishing in my 20s has proved this to me, that even when you think, you know what, I know how to do my job now, I know everything there is to know, you know, new people join the team and you're like explaining how to do everything, you know, you think you're like, you're on top of everything. And then you will be on a project, you'll be working on a book, a campaign, and then you'll realize, oh, I've never ever encountered this before. And you have to just learn quickly. You have to just admit, you know, I don't really know how to do this. But I think coming from a place where you're always willing to learn is the most important lesson I have learned. You know, just being open to learning new things all the time and adapting to those new things is one of the biggest lessons I've learned. And it makes everything a bit like less stressful, because like just admitting and knowing yourself that like you will always be getting better at something and you will always be learning something. I think that is so important. And even now, I've been, you know, in the industry for 7 years. I am in a senior position at my publishing house. So my role is head of publicity. I still don't know everything, and I don't think that's a bad thing to admit that, because as soon as you admit, oh, there's nothing really I have left to learn, then you're already kind of limiting your abilities and you're limiting yourself, you know? So I'm happy to put my hands up and say I have learned that I have a lot more to learn. Okay, my fourth lesson that I've learned is one that's really, really important. It is that the 3 key things to be when you are an employee at whatever age, but something I have learned over the 7 years I've been working in my 20s, is that being kind, professional, and passionate are like the key 3 things I think it's important to hold on to as values when you're a working person. So being kind will get you everywhere. And I think just giving people like respect and being kind to people, even when you're really stressed out yourself, just being kind and patient with people is so important. No matter what your seniority is, no matter how long you've been working at a place, I've learned that being kind and patient with people is very, very important. And of course that feeds into being professional. I think there is a good balance between being professional, being friendly, and as long as you're always trying to give a professional service, that's something I've learned working in publishing. Obviously in publishing, we are an author service, you know? So I think being professional with whatever you're doing and just keeping that as like a forefront of your like working life is so important. And then of course being passionate. This is something that I don't want to lose. And I think that is what makes publishing such a great industry for me is because so many people are passionate about books and authors that even on the hardest days when, you know, you're up against like 5 million deadlines and it's just super stressful and there's a lot of expectation on you, just remember why you're there in the first place and be like, you know what, I love books, I am passionate about the industry, and that does make things better. This is a lesson I've had to learn because, you know, over the years there have been quite a few stressful times, a lot of kind of last minute deadlines and very, very important high pressure projects to work on. But remembering why I'm in this industry in the first place is something that really does help to ground me and just allows me to take a step back and think, you know what, I am so lucky to even be here. Like, working on this project is amazing. And I've got to remember the passion. I've got to bring back the passion for the job, you know? So I think those three things, being kind, professional, and passionate, are things that I've had to really learn and just, you know, keep in mind whenever I'm going about my daily working life. The fifth lesson I have learned working in publishing in my 20s has been that the authors and the books are at the forefront of the industry. So they are the beating heart of the industry, but so are the publishing staff, so are the people. You know, publishing is all about people. And I think remembering that, like remembering the people inside of the industry, that is what makes the industry run, is something that is a big lesson that I've learned. Just keeping authors at the heart of like everything is so important because, like, you know, it is such a symbiotic industry. So without the authors, we wouldn't have books to publish. But equally, without publishers and publishing houses, the authors wouldn't have the opportunity to make their books the biggest success they can be. So I think just remembering the relationship side and kind of like remembering that it is the day-to-day relationships, it is the people in publishing which make it so brilliant, which make it so exciting to work in. There have definitely been like pinch me moments when I've worked with some of my favorite authors and celebrities, and honestly, like, the highlight for me has just been meeting incredible people. I am so lucky that at every publishing house I've worked at, I have made like friends for life. I have made friends that I still speak to every single day and I am very, very close to, and you know, the people are the best thing about the industry. The authors and the people who work at the publishing houses. And my sixth lesson that I've learned is also very, very important and feeds into my last point, which is remember the audience you are working towards. So this is another lesson I've learned working in publishing, is that you've got to remember that publishing relies on people buying books. So this means, who are your audience? And I think this really applies to every single person working in publishing, you know, like, you've got to picture that person going out there in a bookshop and buying the book that you've been working on, whether you are an editor, a publicist, a marketer, a rights person, a salesperson, art, whatever. You've got to remember who the end goal is, like, who is the consumer, who is the audience, and see the audience as people. So this is why this kind of feeds into my last lesson, but seeing the consumer, seeing the audience as a person and thinking of that person, like, what do they like to read? What shops do they go to? Like, what music do they listen to? And kind of like seeing them as a person. That is a big lesson that I have brought with me all these years and kind of learned across the years. As my job is in publicity, I need to be thinking, who is going to be listening to the radio shows that my authors are going on? Like, who's going to be reading this newspaper? So where do we need to get publicity to reach our target audience for this book? So bearing that in mind has always been really important to me. But also kind of like taking a step back and seeing the audience as a person, as real people who are buying books, it makes the whole process so much more kind of like important. Because if you are thinking like, in publishing, we are publishing books that could impact people's lives. Like, You know, I could be working on a book that somebody will buy in a supermarket and it could change their life or just bring them even an hour of comfort. And that is such an amazing thing, is that books have the power to change people, to impact people, to cheer people up, to make them feel happier, to make them feel less alone. And I think that's so important as well. And finally, the 7th and final lesson I've learned working in publishing in my 20s is to see the industry in action. By this, I mean immerse yourself in the industry and remember why you got into it in the first place. So this kind of feeds into a few of my other points about being passionate, about, you know, going out there and remembering the joys of reading, essentially. So key things like going to an author event, going to a bookshop event, going into bookshops and enjoying reading, you know, having reading days, all those little things that feed into the industry and allow you to see the industry in action, I think are super, super important. That's something I've definitely learned, is just to immerse yourself and just being able to support authors, whether that is an event, whether that is buying their book when you see it in a bookshop, whether that is tweeting them and telling them how much you love their book on Twitter. You know, supporting the industry, supporting the authors is so, so important as well. And kind of doing all that, like really kind of immersing yourself in the industry, it makes working in the industry just so much more rewarding because it really reminds you about what you love most about the industry. So that's the 7th lesson I've learned, is just to, you know, support the industry, to buy books from independent bookshops and from Waterstones, and to support authors, to go visit them, you know, at festival events. And I think that's important to kind of like remember why you got into the industry in the first place. You know, remind yourself what you love most about books and reading. And I think sometimes, like, especially when I've been in quite a busy, you know, situation at work where I've just kind of been like exhausted and just like, you know, work is very, very busy right now, I just need to check out. Sometimes it's better to just remind yourself why you got into it in the first place and go back to the authors that you love and maybe go to a book event and just remind yourself and see the joy in other people's faces when they're seeing their favorite authors at events or whatever. Also, this feeds into kind of booktube, because for me, you know, I was off booktube for a few years. Like, I kind of would post max about 5 videos a year. We're talking like 3 or 4 years ago. I just wasn't very consistent with my uploading. But what I've learned now is that, like, even booktube feeds into my day-to-day job. Like, it feeds my passion for the industry, it feeds my passion for books, and I feel like I can bring my enjoyment of booktube, of watching other people's videos, of talking about videos, I can bring this into my job and I can be a better publicist because I see the passion from other people firsthand. So I hope that's made sense. I hope some of these points have been somewhat enlightening or interesting. Basically, what I want to say is I've learned a lot of things working in general in my 20s. I've learned about realizing that work is just a job and you do need boundaries, but equally, I think with publishing, it's a very unique industry because it's very common to live and breathe it. But I think what I've definitely learned in my 20s is that I can do that with healthy boundaries in place. But equally, I do still love working in this industry and it's an exciting place to be, you know? So on those days where work just feels like work, sometimes it's nice to just take a step back and appreciate that, you know, I'm very, very lucky to work in this industry and I've met some incredible people, and books are just great, you know, like they're just great. So it really does help that, you know, I get to help bring books to people. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I realize it's a bit rambly and I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. But if you have any questions about publishing at all, please do leave them down in the comments. I hope to do lots more publishing videos on my channel, so do subscribe and stick around for those. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.